washed offshore with a broken leg. The cold alien baby dragon was found by the human girl then. The waves were still roaring from last night's storm, though the sky had cleared into a soft morning blue. Mira kept her coat pulled tight as she walked the shoreline, eyes scanning for seashells the tide might have brought in. She wasn't expecting to find anything alive, but then she saw it, a dark, tangled shape just where the foam met the sand. At first she thought it was driftwood. Then it moved. Mira dropped to her knees, her boots sinking in wet sand. Lying there, shivering and soaked, was something unlike anything she'd ever seen. It had scales the color of midnight, shimmering faintly like oil in sunlight. Its wings, too small to fly, were folded awkwardly against its sides, and a long tail lay limp beside it. And its eyes, when they blinked open, they glowed faintly gold, wide with fear. "Oh, no," she whispered. "You're just a baby." When she reached out, the little creature flinched, tried to push itself up, but cried out in pain. Myra's heart clenched. Its left hind leg was bent unnaturally, the scales there marred and bruised. She hesitated only for a second. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." It didn't understand her words, she could tell, but something in her voice must have reached it. The dragon's trembling slowed, though its gaze stayed fixed on her like a trapped animal judging whether to trust. The wind whipped cold off the water, and Mira realized with a shock that the creature was freezing. Its breaths were shallow, and every wave that reached it made it shiver harder. She shrugged off her coat and carefully draped it over the dragon, crouching so her body blocked the wind. "You're going to be all right," she murmured, though she wasn't sure she believed it yet. Getting it home would be the next problem. Her cottage was half a mile up the beach, but this little one looked heavier than it seemed. At least 50 pounds, and awkward to carry with those delicate wings and the broken leg. She glanced around. No one else was on the beach. "Guess it's just you and me," she sighed. Mira slipped her arms gently beneath the dragon, cradling it like an oversized cat. It made a low, pitiful sound in its throat, but didn't fight. Every step through the shifting sand felt heavier, the wet coat dragging against her arms. But she kept going. By the time she reached her cottage, she was sweating despite the cold. She kicked the door shut behind her and carried the creature straight to the fireside, laying it on a pile of blankets she kept for winter nights. The dragon's eyes followed her every move, blinking slowly. Mira fetched another blanket and draped it over its body, careful to leave its head uncovered. "Okay," she said softly. "First we get you warm." She lit the fire, the flames crackling to life, then filled a basin with warm, not hot, water. With a soft cloth, she began to wipe away the salt crust from the dragon's scales, speaking in a quiet voice the whole time. It startled when she touched its injured leg, letting out a hiss that made the hairs on her arms rise. She froze, waiting for it to come again. "I know, that hurts, but we've got to take care of it." She wasn't a vet, especially not for alien reptiles, but her father had taught her enough about splinting a leg when she was younger. She improvised with soft cloth and 2 thin pieces of driftwood, wrapping the injury gently but firmly. When she was done, the dragon rested its head on the blankets with a slow, weary sigh. Mira set down a shallow bowl of water, and another with some chopped fish from her icebox. At first, it only looked at the food. Then hunger won, and it began to eat in small, delicate bites. "You like fish, huh?" Mira smiled faintly. "Good thing I live by the ocean." Days passed, and the baby dragon, because there was no doubt in her mind now, grew a little stronger. It still couldn't walk well, but it was sitting up more, and the gold in its eyes had softened from fear to something closer to curiosity. On the fourth day, it made a small sound, a chirrup, when she entered the room, as if greeting her. Myra's chest warmed in a way she hadn't felt in years. She started calling it Nyari, though she had no idea if it was male or female. It didn't seem to mind. One evening, as the firelight danced over the walls, Mira sat beside Nyari, gently stroking the smooth scales between its eyes. "Where did you come from, little one? There aren't supposed to be any dragons here. At least not on Earth." Nyari blinked slowly, and for just a second, she thought she felt something, like the faintest whisper in her mind. Cold, scared alone. Mira gasped and pulled back. Telepathy? No. She must have imagined it. But when she looked at Nyari, those golden eyes were fixed on her with a depth that made her think otherwise. The next morning, the peace shattered. A deep, echoing roar rolled over the beach. Mira ran outside in time to see a massive shape circling far offshore, dark wings spanning wider than her cottage. Another roar, lower, mournful. Nyari answered from inside with a sharp, high call. Her heart raced. That must be its parent. The giant dragon swooped lower, scanning the shoreline. Mira knew that if it came closer and saw her with Nyari, there might be trouble. A protective parent could be dangerous. But Nyari was struggling to move, limping toward the door, eyes fixed on the sky. Mira knelt. "You're not ready to go out there. You can barely walk." A pulse in her mind, not words, but a feeling, flowed from Nyari. "Need home." She swallowed. "If I take you to the beach, you promise you'll stay beside me?" The baby nudged her hand with its nose. So Mira wrapped it in her coat again, lifted it into her arms, and walked to the water's edge. The massive dragon spotted them instantly and let out a roar that shook her bones. She almost turned and ran, but Nyari chirped, struggling to be put down. Mira set it gently on the sand, supporting it so it wouldn't fall. The little dragon lifted its head and called out again, a sound full of relief. The big one swooped lower, its talons skimming the waves before it landed with a spray of seawater. It was beautiful and terrifying, scales glittering like polished obsidian, eyes blazing gold like Nyari's. It approached, each step making Myra's heart pound harder. But its gaze wasn't on her. It was on the little bundle in her hands. Nyari reached forward, touching noses with the giant. A deep, rumbling sound, like a purr, came from the adult. Mira stepped back, sensing she was no longer needed. But before the parent turned away, it fixed its golden eyes on her. A warmth bloomed in her mind, the same way Nyari had touched her thoughts. A simple message. "Thank you." Then, with a sweep of its massive wings, the adult scooped Nyari gently into its claws and leapt into the sky. Mira watched them rise higher and higher until they were just two dark specks against the clouds. The beach felt empty without them, but she smiled anyway. Somewhere out there, Nyari was home, safe and warm. And maybe, just maybe, they would remember the human girl who found a cold little dragon on the shore and decided to save it.